Welcome to the deep dive. Ever stop to think about what a potter shaping clay might have in common with what's happening inside your own head when you learn something new?
It sounds like a pretty surprising question, right?
Yeah.
But the article we've been looking at, Shiva Narayan Taxila's Pottery Wheel and the Thalamus of Brain, it draws this really intriguing parallel.
Exactly, between shaping clay and, well, shaping knowledge. And that's precisely what we're diving into today.
Yeah.
Our mission really is to unpack this connection and get a clearer picture of how our brains actively build understanding. We're not just passively soaking things up.
Mm-hmm.
And this analogy, along with this concept from the article called learnography, it's presented as an active system of knowledge transfer.
Right. Active transfer.
It promises a kind of fresh perspective, maybe making learning stick better and feel, I don't know, less overwhelming.
Absolutely. By understanding the brain's active role, maybe we can unlock more effective ways to learn. It makes sense.
Okay, so let's get into this central comparison then. The article kicks things off by describing the pottery wheel as this dynamic center of transformation for just a lump of clay.
Yeah.
You can only see the potter's hands at work, can't you? Making those deliberate movements, feeling the clay respond.
Right. Coaxing it into a specific form through touch and action.
And the article then makes a direct connection to a key structure in the brain, the thalamus.
That's right. It explains that the thalamus acts as the brain's central hub, sort of a relay station processing all sorts of sensory information and crucially coordinating our motor responses.
So, if the potter is shaping the clay with their hands, the article proposes that the thalamus is involved in shaping our brain's internal structure of knowledge.
Hmm?
And this is where the idea of brain page modules comes in, within this framework called learnography. So are brain page modules like individual files or maybe folders of knowledge in our brain, organized somehow by the thalamus?
That's a helpful way to think about it, yeah. Learnography, as the article presents it, isn't about just passively absorbing facts. It's described as a system of active knowledge transfer, a motor science-based approach.
Motor science.
Yeah, where we construct our understanding through actions, movements, and feedback we get back.
Mhm.
It's a real shift from the traditional idea of just being, taught at.
Right.
So if traditional learning is maybe like passively watching a potter, learnography is about getting your own hands muddy, learning by doing, with the thalamus acting like your personal guide, adjusting your movements based on feedback.
That makes a lot of sense. So instead of just listening to a lecture, the idea is that learning becomes more powerful when it's hands-on, more
Yeah,
thalamus-driven, as the article puts it.
exactly.
It sounds like the thalamus is really central to this active learning process.
Definitely. The article even calls the thalamus the neurological wheel of learning. Think about it. It's constantly channeling sensory input, what to see, hear, touch, and coordinating our motor output, how we respond, how we interact.
Mm.
This back and forth, this interaction with the real world is what allows us to build lasting knowledge, according to this perspective. It's almost like the thalamus is the conductor of our learning orchestra.
Like that. Let's take a closer look at the pottery side again. When you picture a potter working, they're centering the clay, pressing, pulling, shaping. It's such a physical process.
Very physical.
The article really emphasizes just how motor-driven it is, relying on muscle memory developed through practice, a keen sense of timing, and spatial awareness of the clay's form.
Absolutely. And the potter isn't learning from a textbook, are they? They're learning by doing.
Right.
They're constantly getting sensory feedback, how the clay feels under their fingers, how it's moving on the wheel, and making these tiny adjustments in real time.
So it's learning through action and sensory input.
Yeah.
A very direct kind of motor learning.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have this vivid image of the potter actively shaping the clay. Now let's zoom in on the brain's equivalent, the thalamus. The article describes it as this walnut-sized structure
Yeah, tiny but mighty.
situated just above the brainstem, often called the brain's relay station.
That's right. But it's really important to realize it's not just passively passing messages along like an old switchboard operator.
Okay.
The thalamus plays an active role in several crucial functions. Processing those sensory inputs, yes, but also focusing our attention,
Attention to...
coordinating our motor responses, and even actively participating in both motor and cognitive learning, decision-making, our conscious awareness. It's involved in a lot.
So like if you're trying to focus on reading this article in a noisy cafe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your thalamus is working hard to filter out the clatter and chatter and keep your focus on the words. It's actively shaping your perception.
That's a great example. The article really positions the thalamus as this motor gateway of knowledge transfer within learnography.
Mm-hmm. Motor gateway. I like that phrasing.
It's not just receiving information, it's actively integrating it, taking in what we see, hear, and feel, and connecting it with our internal processing centers like memory, motor control, our sense of space.
Precisely. So whether you're, reading something complex, trying to solve a puzzle, or learning a new physical skill like, say, tennis,
Yeah.
the thalamus is ensuring the right neural pathways are being engaged. It's guiding that flow of learning, that knowledge transfer from perception to action, very much like the potter guiding the clay, responding to its feel.
And this leads to the concept of brain page formation. The article explains that learnography is essentially about taking knowledge from the external world, from books, experiences, conversations, and embedding it within our brain's internal networks
Right.
through this active, motor-driven interaction.
Think of it this way. Learning isn't just something that gets poured into your head like water into a cup. It's something you actively build. When you take notes by hand, or when you physically build a model to understand a scientific concept, or even just pace while you're trying to memorize something, you're engaging those motor pathways. And that seems to help solidify your understanding. It reminds me of learning guitar. Just reading the chords wasn't enough. I had to physically practice forming them, moving my fingers.
Yeah, that physical practice makes a huge difference.
It felt like my brain was making those connections in a different, maybe stronger way.
And the brain page is this neural construct of learned knowledge modules. The article compares it to the finished clay pot. It needs to be centered, shaped, and stabilized through effort and attention.
Exactly. And that's where the thalamus comes back in. It's like that spinning wheel, providing stability to the flow of knowledge, aligning the sensory feedback we get with our motor actions, which ultimately helps in forming lasting memories, stabilizing the learning process.
It's a really dynamic comparison when you put it like that.
Yeah.
You've got the tactile art of pottery on one hand,
Yeah.
and the intricate neurological process of cognition on the other. But at their core, both involve shaping something, whether it's physical clay or abstract understanding, through deliberate action.
It's not passive reception, it's active creation. That's the key thread.
The article emphasizes how crucial that constant sensory feedback and fine motor control are for the potter, and that really mirrors what a learner needs, doesn't it?
It does. Focus attention, active engagement with the material, and perception, all guided by the thalamus to form those mental shapes of knowledge.
And importantly, the article highlights that mistakes are an inherent part of both pottery and learning.
Oh, definitely. Anyone who's tried pottery knows that.
Right. A misshapen piece of clay can often be reworked, reshaped. And similarly, a misunderstanding in learning can be corrected through revisiting the material, getting feedback, practicing again.
It's an iterative process, which is maybe a key difference from more static, passive learning methods that don't always build in that chance for trial, error, and correction.
It really frames learning as this creative act, deeply connected to our brain's motor systems. And just like a potter uses specific tools, ribs, wires, sponges to refine their work,
Right.
learnography also suggests tools like structured tasks, specific activities, maybe certain ways of organizing information that can help us refine our understanding.
What's particularly interesting is how the article concludes with a direct call to action, drawing on these very ideas.
Okay, what does it suggest?
Well, it encourages us to embrace more action-based approaches, both in classrooms and in our own personal learning, to really recognize the thalamus as this central dynamic hub, the learning wheel in our brain.
Yes, I saw that. It advocates for a move away from maybe traditional lecture-heavy teaching towards this more hands-on, learnography-driven approach.
Exactly.
The goal seems to be empowering learners to actively mold their own brain page modules, as it calls them. So based on this learnography idea, what might that look like in practice? What specific changes could, say, educators or even just individuals make?
Well, it suggests things like incorporating more active engagement, more problem solving, more real-world application.
So fewer lectures, more labs, or projects.
Pretty much.
Right.
Think about science experiments where students do the procedure, not just read about it. Or history classes where maybe students create presentations, debates, or even reenactments.
Oh, okay. Things that get you physically or mentally doing something with the information.
Precisely. These kinds of activities engage the motor systems, provide that crucial feedback loop, and that seems to strengthen learning, aligning with these principles of learnography. It could even be incorporating more movement into study habits.
Interesting. So to sort of bring it all together, this deep dive into Shiva Narayan Takshala's article,
Hmm.
it reveals this really fascinating, quite thought-provoking connection, doesn't it?
It really does.
Between the, well, seemingly simple act of shaping clay on a pottery wheel and the complex processes happening inside our brain, specifically involving the thalamus.
Mm.
It really underscores the power of viewing learning, not as something we just passively receive, but as an active, almost hands-on process of shaping our own understanding.
Yeah, the core takeaway, I think, is that true understanding isn't merely absorbed, it's actively crafted.
Crafted, I like that word here.
Crafted through our engagement with the world, through our actions, and through the integration of our senses and motor responses, all orchestrated by that central neurological hub, the thalamus.
So as you, the listener, continue your own learning journey, maybe consider this.
Yeah.
How can you become more of a cognitive potter?
Ah, a cognitive potter.
Yeah. How can you actively engage with new information to truly shape your understanding, rather than just passively taking it in?
It's a great question to ponder.
Maybe it means taking more detailed notes by hand, actively seeking out chances to apply what you're learning, or even just, like you said, physically moving while you study or think.
Hmm.
Think about how you can shift from being just a passive recipient of information to an active creator of knowledge in your own mind.
And perhaps exploring this concept of learnography further could provide a really valuable framework for thinking about that more active and hopefully more effective approach to learning.
A fascinating perspective to consider.